What's up and welcome to the Grant Burton Film and TV Show. That's right, film and TV now. If you want games, you need to go to Games with Grant, which debuts tomorrow, which is a Tuesday, if you're watching this on Monday when I upload it. I'm Grant Burton, I'm hosting the show. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at _Grant Burton, or you can go to /grant.wordpress.com for all of my written reviews. On today's show, we're talking Solo, the future of Star Wars, Billy Dee Williams, The Incredibles, Season 1 of Barry, and much, much more. If you like what you see, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe, click the thumbs up, leave a comment, question, topic of concern down below. I will get to it as soon as I can. Share this on social media. Do whatever you can to support it. Give it a view. Fast forward through it if you don't really want to watch it. Whatever you want, it's totally fine with me. But we start with the news. This is from Rebecca Rubin at Variety. Incredibles 2 has a $180 million debut weekend in the USA, the biggest ever for an animated film. This film was destined to do well. It's been a long time since the first film. A lot of people really liked the first film. I really liked the first film. And the hype and the excitement and the waiting has really helped it, I think. Also, superhero films, they're the in thing right now. So, it's cashing off Marvel and DC's back here. Nothing really too surprising. Number 2, Steve Weintraub of Collider says future A Star Wars Story spin-offs put on hold at Lucasfilm. The focus is now on Episode 9 and the next trilogy. Solo didn't do well at the box office. It was a bit of a bomb, and that's really surprising for a Star Wars film. There's a lot to consider when you are trying to work out why this is happening. Go back to The Last Jedi, which came out in December. The Last Jedi was critically acclaimed and it done really well at the box office, but when the fans saw it, the reaction was very divisive. I really did not like it when I first saw it. Over time, I've grew to accept it and I'm liking it a bit more, but The Last Jedi is not my favourite Star Wars film, and I am a little worried about what's next. J.J. Abrams is doing the next one, so that's thumbs up from me, I'm all for that. But the mixed reception of The Last Jedi, it was really severe. There are people petitioning out there to try and get it remade. People directing their hate towards Kelly Marie Tran, who played Rose. I do not condone that at all. It's not her fault. And what else? People are talking about how it ruined their childhood, how it ruined Star Wars for them, and I can see that. There's a lot about this film I absolutely hate. But there's also the fact that while this is all going on, Solo is in production. Lord and Miller, who were directing it, were fired, and Ron Howard was brought in to finish directing it. And Ron Howard, a good director, but the reason Lord and Miller were fired is a little vague. There are reasons out there, whether you want to believe them or not. One of which is that they weren't getting on with Kathleen Kennedy or writer Lawrence Kasdan. Another is that they were doing a lot of improvisation, and the budget was going way, way up, and for a big budget science fiction film like this, you really need to be careful with that. So Ron Howard came in. Apparently he reshot about 70% of the scenes. Apparently Alden Ehrenreich, who played Han Solo, needed an acting coach. And with all of this going on behind the scenes, a lot of people were like, oh, this might not be very good. You've then got the release of the film. The trailers and the marketing really weren't well received. I didn't like any of the trailers for this film. It didn't build me with hype or hope or anything. So, 5 months after The Last Jedi, they released this film. That's not a big gap. It's the shortest gap between Star Wars films ever. And I don't think people were quite over The Last Jedi. So, that's probably why they didn't go see it. So what does this mean for Star Wars? Well, we knew that an Obi-Wan Kenobi spin-off was in production, in some stage of production. We don't know the exact specifics of it yet. We also know James Mangold was working on a Boba Fett film. Both of those sound great, I'm all for it, but now it sounds like they might not be in production. We don't know about Rian Johnson's next trilogy. If that's still in production, is that episodes 9? Well, no, episodes 10, 11, 12. We also know David Benioff and D.B. Wise from Game of Thrones are working on at least 2 films. So what's the status on that? Right now everything's up in the air, but Lucasfilm has came out and said that these reports are false. So where did this all come from? If these are false, why is everyone talking about it? I think these are true. I think Lucasfilm is simply trying to save face and act as if nothing is going on that you have to worry about. They are a company, they have to look out for their public reception. And yeah, I don't think we're going to see any spin-offs anytime soon. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe once a year is too much for a Star Wars film. I'd be happy with a Star Wars film every 2 or 3 years. And I love Star Wars, so yeah. There's The Last Jedi, the very divisive Last Jedi. I did not like this film at all when it first came out. There are things I absolutely hate about it. But there's a lot of reading material on the outside which has really helped me come to grips with what's going on. It's helped me understand the decisions that were made. But on the second viewing of this film, I liked it more. I might like it even more on a third viewing, I don't know. I haven't really got around to doing that yet. But give The Last Jedi a second chance if you haven't already. Next up, more Star Wars news. This is from Kevin Berwick at MovieWeb. Billy Dee Williams has been seen training and dieting, similar to how Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher were doing prior to their casting in The Force Awakens. So the rumours are suggesting that he's doing this because he's in the next Star Wars film, Star Wars Episode 9. And I've got to say, it's about damn time. Lando Calrissian, one of my favourite characters from the original trilogy, one of the main characters I would say, and there's been no mention of him, nothing from these new films. And I'm just glad he's back, if he is back. And you've got to consider that in Solo, he's portrayed by Donald Glover, who's like the in thing right now with Atlanta and Childish Gambino and Solo. He's also starting to appear more in the comic books and the books, the Lando Calrissian character that is. So they're gearing up for more Lando right now. And just an interesting bit of trivia is that at one point Lando was going to be in The Last Jedi. Rian Johnson had a role in mind, but he felt it was a little unsuitable. That role was the role of DJ, who was played by Benicio del Toro. But originally it was going to be Lando, and Rian Johnson chose against that because it was a little too villainous. So yeah, it makes sense. Next up, I don't know how to pronounce this name. Huy Tran Bui from Slash Film. Maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong, I don't know. According to a storyboard artist, an unfinished version of Zack Snyder's Justice League exists. All the shots were done except planned reshoots and visual effects. Fans are now petitioning for the release of the Snyder Cut. Zack Snyder is not a good filmmaker. He's done some good things, Dawn of the Dead for example, but why do people want to see a Zack Snyder cut of Justice League? He done Man of Steel, which was very average, Sucker Punch, which was bad, Batman v Superman, which was terrible. Why do you want to see more of what he can do? As far as I'm concerned, he's ruined this DC EU, and I do not want to see a Snyder cut at all. I will say this though, Snyder is a good cinematographer, if only he actually was a cinematographer. Because you look at any of his films, visually they're stunning, very stylish, very artistic. But when it comes to directing and writing, he's just not good enough, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, like I said, he has done some good stuff in the past. Dawn of the Dead in particular. Watchmen as well wasn't too bad. So it's not as if he's the worst thing ever. Paul Daly at TV Fanatic says that Jon Bernthal is returning to The Walking Dead, and there was an image, a behind the scenes image of Norman Reedus and Andrew Lincoln, and in the background is someone that looks like Jon Bernthal. I think it is Jon Bernthal. And you're probably wondering, if you're a fan of The Walking Dead, getting into spoilers here, so be careful. Jon Bernthal's only in the first 2 seasons of The Walking Dead because he dies. And he definitively dies. There's no way you can bring him back to life. So this is probably going to be in flashback form. It's probably going to link in with how Andrew Lincoln is leaving the show this season. And it's probably only going to be like 1 or 2 appearances, maybe a couple more. But the problem is that The Walking Dead is just really not very good right now. So I don't really care about this at all. Joe Orteson at Variety says that producer Alex Kurtzman, who is now the showrunner on Star Trek Discovery, has signed a new deal with CBS and will oversee the future of the Star Trek film franchise. There are 4 potential shows in development. I'm a big Star Trek fan. Star Trek Deep Space Nine is my favourite of the series, but I'm also a big fan of The Next Generation. Voyager is a little, it gets better as it goes on, and Enterprise is alright. Discovery I thought was perfectly fine. It done something different. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. And I've never really watched the original series. I've tried a few times, it's just really dated and I don't like it. So here are the 4 shows that are rumoured to be in production. There's one that's focusing on Starfleet Academy. Alright, a little different, but when I think of Starfleet Academy and a TV show focused on it, I'm thinking of like some sort of cheesy high school drama, and I'm not sure if I want that from Star Trek. The other one is a limited season focusing on Khan Noonien Singh, who was played by Ricardo Montalban in the original series as well as in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and, spoilers, he was played by Benedict Cumberbatch in Star Trek Into Darkness. This, I think, is an example of not going forward with the series. Going back, trying to get on that nostalgia train, and I don't want to see this. The other series that's rumoured to be in production is an animated show. We don't really know much about that, but I'm all for that. I think Star Trek would work really well on a modern animated show. There is a Star Trek animated series already out there, but I've never really watched it. And here's the one that's really got me excited. Is that there's a show apparently focused on the returning Patrick Stewart as Jean-Luc Picard. And I'm really all for this. If this becomes like a continuation of The Next Generation, then this has to happen. I want to see a continuation of The Next Generation with all the characters returning in some form, really give them the send-off that Star Trek Nemesis didn't quite give them. So yeah, I'm all for that. This is just a really, really good time to be a Star Trek fan. Next up, final story. Dave McNary of Variety says that Paramount is developing a 3rd Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, and it's intended to be a bit of a reboot. The last 2 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles got mixed reviews at best from critics and fans of the series, and I don't think they performed that well either. So this is a little surprising, but this is a huge franchise that's been going on for years and years and years, and the fans that like it really like it. I'm not a fan of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's before my time, I want to say, and it's always seemed just a little cheesy and silly for me, but yeah. So I don't really know where the entry point is, where the best entry point is, because you've got them in video games, you've got them in comic books, there's tons of TV shows, and now there's multiple film series. So if this is a reboot, maybe this is a good place to get in there, but only if it's good. Moving on to this week's trailers. Creed 2. I've never seen a Rocky film, and I've never seen the first Creed. The reason for that is because These films, to me, they often just come across as generic sports boxing films. I think they're very predictable, very silly at times, very unrealistic. And I know they get good reviews, but I don't think they're for me. And this trailer looked like a very generic boxing film, so I don't think I'm going to see it. It was filled with really just cliche bad dialogue. I think Sylvester Stallone's writing this one, or maybe he's just directing it, I can't remember. But yeah, this one's probably not going to be as well received as the last film. Then there was this one really odd. Welcome to Marwen stars Steve Carell and it's directed by Robert Zemeckis. I like Robert Zemeckis and I love Steve Carell. I think he's a really good actor in comedic roles. He's done some good drama, but he is better as a comedian. And I was watching this trailer and I just don't know what to make of it. Is it a comedy? Is it a drama? It just looks weird. If it is a comedy, none of the jokes landed. And because it's about like toys coming to life, the CGI is integral and the CGI just looked really bad, I thought. Again, it's a trailer, so work in progress, CGI can't be judged too much. But yeah, it just looks really odd and something didn't click about this trailer. We're moving on now to this week's reviews, and I am reviewing, as soon as I can get this working, Barry Season 1. I love this show. This is one of the best shows I've seen in quite a while. It's certainly one of the best new shows this year. Written, directed and starring Bill Hader, who's probably best known for his time on Saturday Night Live. It's very funny, very dramatic. It's about a hitman who, on his latest hit, he goes to an acting school to spy on his target, and there he gets the acting buzz. He wants to become an actor, but he's still got some killing to do, and there's a lot of twists and turns, a lot of surprises. Like I said, it's very funny. Tonally, it's similar to Breaking Bad, because it does go to dark places at times. There's scenes of torture and really severe violence, some shocking deaths and surprises in there. If you like Breaking Bad, you might want to give this a go. Also, a shout out to Henry Winkler, who was absolutely awesome. Hey! Sequels, prequels, remakes, reboots, and spin-offs. A large portion of Hollywood cinema is dedicated to them. If you go down to the cinema right now, there's probably at least one being shown. When you have a recognizable brand or franchise, it's generally easier to promote and market. Familiarity is far more welcoming than the unknown. However, sometimes big franchises get it wrong. Sometimes the latest entry in their series is disappointing commercially or critically. The best franchises are able to recognize their failings, move on, and make a comeback. With the recent release of Solo, a Star Wars story, being a box office disappointment, as well as Lucasfilm's decision to halt production on all future Star Wars spin-offs, I have collected 5 examples of franchises that made a stunning recovery after seemingly falling on hard times. The first film is The Muppets. It's time to play the music, it's time to light the lights, it's that one film that brought the Muppets back to life. In 2011, director James Bobin and star and co-writer Jason Segel revived the aging Muppet franchise. They injected modern humor, fresh, new ideas, energetic music from Christoph Beck, and most importantly, heart and soul into a franchise that had grown stale and dated. The result was a film that paid homage to what came before, that paved the way for a yet untapped future, and a film that's fun, energetic, funny, and colourful. The Muppets is the greatest Muppet film ever. It's a film that's just as likely to make you laugh as it is to make you cry, and it brought back the lovable characters of the 70s in a way that pleases fans of Days Gone, but also new, younger audiences. It's exactly what a reboot or sequel should be. The next film is Fast 5. It's unusual for the 5th entry in a franchise to be the best one. especially when that franchise was starting to run on fumes and hit some bumps in the road. Fast 5 brought back the cast from the first two Fast and Furious films and combined them with a handful of characters from elsewhere in the franchise. To top it off, the film added Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's magnetic, charismatic presence into the mix, and together they created a slick, action-packed film that truly changed the franchise. The best sequels know not to repeat the previous films. Fast 5 was the first in the franchise to do something different. The film moved away from street racing and cliché crime stories and shifted gears, turning into a heist film. Due to the critical and commercial success of Fast 5, the franchise is still ongoing today. Each sequel has since upped the excitement and the action, and it's all thanks to this film. Batman and Robin, directed by Joel Schumacher and starring George Clooney, is considered to be one of the worst films ever made. It ended that incarnation of the character, and it almost killed the franchise altogether. In 2005, writer and director Christopher Nolan reinvigorated the Batman film franchise with a darker, grittier, more realistic reboot of the character, with minimal CGI, on-location shooting, serious adult storytelling, and inspiration from some of the best Batman comic books ever. Christopher Nolan brought Batman back to life in Batman Begins. He followed that up with not only one of the greatest comic book adaptations ever, but arguably one of the greatest films ever, The Dark Knight. This was in stark contrast to the Batman films that preceded it. Batman Begins is the quintessential example of a film bringing new life into a franchise. It's just a shame that Warner Brothers decided to reboot it again, disastrously. In 2011, 20th Century Fox rebooted the long-running Planet of the Apes franchise after an attempted reboot in 2001 by Tim Burton. The new trilogy of films, starting with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, takes a more grounded and realistic approach. With similar elements to the 1972 film Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, Rise looks at the origins of the apes and shows us how they started their takeover of the planet. With attention on racial issues, animal abuse, the ethics of war, and so on, this new trilogy brought the apes back to the forefront of cinema. The franchise was no longer a science fiction fantasy, so much as it was a reflection of real-world events, politics, and social issues. This gave the films more depth and detail and helped the reboot connect with modern audiences. The final film is Dawn of the Dead. By the time 2004 came along, the zombie movie was growing stale and repetitive. Zombies were simply not scary or threatening anymore. The comic book series, The Walking Dead, debuted a year earlier to rave reviews, and it became an instant hit, starting the revival of the genre. It was the 2004 Dawn of the Dead that really invigorated the franchise though. Paying homage to the films of George A. Romero, the 2004 film made the zombies faster, scarier, more aggressive and threatening, similar to the film 28 Days Later, released 2 years earlier. Dawn of the Dead brought new life to the zombie horror subgenre. Without the 2004 film, we may never have seen the long-running Walking Dead TV show, or the book World War Z. And, after the release of the 2004 film, legendary zombie horror director George A. Romero returned to the genre he made famous, and made a series of Living Dead films. These are just some of the best film comebacks ever. I'm sure there are plenty of more out there. With the future of Star Wars franchise seemingly being reimagined and refocused, the franchise is in a slightly worrisome place for Star Wars fans such as myself. However, lesser franchises than Star Wars have came back stronger than ever, and some may argue Star Wars itself has done so before. Star Wars isn't dead, nor is it dying. Regardless of what happens to the franchise going forward, there's no doubt that this isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Thanks for watching the Grant Burton Film and Television Show. I'm your host, Grant Burton. There might have been a really odd edit there somewhere because something happened, I don't know what. Hopefully the microphone's better this week. It's actually aimed at my mouth, so you can actually hear me this time. The long tone noise that was in last week's episode, probably gone. It's just a case of clicking every button until something works, so maybe it's worked, maybe it hasn't. If you want to support me, you can subscribe to my channel, give it a thumbs up, like this, share this, Go on social media, talk about this, leave a comment, question, topic, concern, some advice, but don't be a dick, because that really doesn't help. And if you want me to talk video games, Games with Grant will debut tomorrow, which is a Tuesday, and yeah, that's about it. Hope you've liked the show. If you haven't, well, sorry. And I'm out.